All right, welcome everyone to our quarterly COBOL webinars.
No, I'm sorry, you have to start the webinar. Right now at the top, it still says it's a practice webinar, practice session.
I can click start. Do you want me to just click start, Sudarshana?
Yeah.
Okay, can you?
All
Or
right.
did I miss
Oh,
this?
we started. Yep, someone clicked it.
Okay.
All right. Welcome everyone to our first quarter for 2023 COBOL webinar for the COBOL Programming Course. As you all know, COBOL Programming Course is one of Open Mainframe's projects. It is a course that we launched back in April 2020. Paul Newton here on the call, TSC member, is our, is the brains behind the course. When we launched it, it was a record time project that we launched in a little over a month and landed it around April 14th, 2020 on Open Mainframe project. Very excited since then to have reached and engaged and nurtured so many learners who've been very interested to learn all about COBOL. That said, my name is Sudarshana Srinivasan. I work as an IBM Z Advocacy Manager at IBM, and I'm also the co-lead for this COBOL programming course at Open Mainframe project. I have the joy and pleasure of working with all these amazing folks, so I'll turn it to Mike.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Bauer. I have a lot of experience on the Zoe project underneath the Open Mainframe project, and also I'm now a co-lead of the COBOL programming course. I maintain a lot of the GitHub assets for the team, and we're always looking for new contributions. So if anyone has any ideas around how to improve the course, and we'll kind of discuss that today as well, but feel free to, even if you can't contribute it, feel free to open up an issue and give us ideas to help us move forward. But right now, I'd say the course is fairly stable, and we have a ton of learners consuming the content. So I guess I'll turn it over to Joe. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My name's Joe Winster. I've been around the mainframe for a number of years, and I love working with customers, and especially the intersection of modernization and open source. And I work with Mike and others on a popular open mainframe project called Zoe. And Rune and I, we've known each other for a number of years. We bumped into each other at customer conferences and things. So really looking forward to seeing what we're going to come up with today on COBOL Check. Paul,
do you want to go next?
Yeah, you're muted, Paul. Double muted. Yeah, there you go.
I definitely report to Sudarshana. I'm grateful that Mike took over this thing because it grew beyond anything I could manage, and I'm not very good with GitHub. And Joe has always been, because of his Zoe knowledge, and we're using Zoe as a front end. So it's a great team that I've been working with, and I'm kind of excited to have Rune here because I've heard about COBOL Check. I don't know anything about it. I'm a novice. So for me, when Rune talks, I may ask a few simple questions because I just don't know.
Absolutely. And Rune, thank you so much for being our guest speaker here today and to bring your wealth of knowledge from not just overall COBOL, but as a lead and co-lead of COBOL Check, which is, again, another sister project here at Open Mainframe project. And as the COBOL programming course, we're looking at what next for the course, we turned to debugging and testing and said, hey, there's an opportunity here. How about we reach out and have this conversation with our team, with our COBOL Check team members. So thank you, Rune. If you can introduce yourself and tell us a little about COBOL Check, and we'll get this conversation going.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm Rune. I work in the banking sector in Denmark, and we are heavily engaged in the unit testing framework for COBOL. We've named that COBOL Check. And we've been using this version of COBOL Check for about 9 months now in my organization. And before that, we used the previous version, which was written in COBOL. The current version is written in Java. We've used that for almost 3 years now. So we're building quite a large suite of unit tests in COBOL at my organization. What was the second part of the question?
No, just let's get this, talk a little about COBOL Check itself. And
Yeah,
you mentioned
so
that, now it's being in, yeah, go ahead.
COBOL Check is a unit testing framework for COBOL, enabling you to test sections instead of entire programs. It also enables you to mock different types of code, for example, calls or sections or paragraphs, and you can validate that variables contain the content you want after running the code. So you can, as in any other test tool, you can, how is it? The 3 A's, the act, assemble, and no, I can't remember. I have a slide deck somewhere at work where it's this. So you can set up your test using plain COBOL. You can run your test using plain COBOL, and then you can verify the result using syntax that's coming with COBOL Check. Yeah, let's just keep it at that.
So one quick question I've got. So if I'm on a ZOS system and I'm the system programmer, what do I need to do to make COBOL Check work on my system?
On the set, you need to download the package on the COBOL Check website. It's I believe it's already pre-built for you, and then you more or less write a JCL giving your program and your unit tests as input to the runner to COBOL Check, and it will give you the result of your test. And
is the runner a started task? What did this runner?
No, it's like running any other Java package on set.
Okay.
Rune, I wasn't aware of that. I thought because you run with you don't run with the standard compiler, do you? You run with a modified compiler to sort of stub out the procs, don't you?
Okay, so COBOL Check can run using the GNU compiler for example, in VS Code or on any other platform. We use the GNU compiler in VS Code and in our Jenkins pipelines for validating that the unit tests are okay. On the mainframe, we use the IBM compiler.
Oh, okay,
okay. Yeah, so COBOL Check you can tell COBOL Check to just build the test, run it, compile it, run it, and give me the result. But you can also tell COBOL Check to just build the test, and that test will be plain old COBOL, and you then choose the compiler of choice and build a program. You run that program, and the program will eject the result.
Cool. Yes, I think, right, Joe, Rune, I think this add-on or this additional feature that COBOL Check sort of brought in over the last maybe 2 or so years, I want to say, we've talked about COBOL Check even in the past, but I think this additional feature of being able to bring in that enterprise compiler for COBOL is what makes this a very interesting intersection and a good time for this conversation to see how we could then introduce it into our COBOL programming course, right? And introduce a whole new chapter around debugging and testing. Of course, that would mean having much more robust code. And I think we have some volunteers already to help us, build sort of that robust code that is more unit test friendly, right? That lends itself more for testing. So that's what I really would love to hear more about is how can we weave it? Is this a good fit, first of all? And that to me feels like the answer is yes. Rune is nodding. So then the question is, how could we bring these two together? When I say these two, the COBOL Programming Course and COBOL Check.
And so, Sudarshan, the first thing that I didn't know that COBOL Check website exists. So I just went there and I'm at Rune's GitHub. And so what I would probably need to do now is he's got documentation, he's got examples, some of the things he was just telling me about. And so I know in my case, I would have to, and he's got a VS Code extension I see here as well. So I know in my case, I would have to kind of review what he's got out here. And so yeah, I see there's a COBOL Check GitHub repository with examples.
Yeah, Paul, the VS Code extension, the last time I saw it, that's really nice. It's really shiny. It's very similar. I know you started off the call saying that you don't like Java, but it's sort of similar. It's almost looks like it's JUnit inspired, isn't in a strange, because the whole way that you can just you define basically assert statements. And anyway, we're not going to talk to that, but I think that bit is really classy.
Yeah. The only thing is that sometimes you know, that deprecation word would bug me. You know, it's kind of like a new release goes in and they may have done something, all of a sudden it doesn't work. But he says it's been working for 3 years, you know, so it's really good.
Yep. I mean, Rune and Bankdata are also huge supporters of the COBOL programming course itself. So I just wanted to, you know, sort of say big thank you to Rune. He's been our special guest speaker multiple times, you know, and one of our early adopters of the COBOL programming course, using it to train and bring their new hires and new developers, you know, trained on COBOL. So, so Rune, I think you are indeed sort of like the best person to think about it and see where and how you could see it intersect and how this could be even implemented. Because I know you've leveraged and used the COBOL course and you know the COBOL Check really well. So where would you start, or what are some initial thoughts to this?
Well, you can approach this in several different ways, because you can, I've seen approaches with testing tools where you're actually using the testing tools to teach the language. So you say, okay, you need to learn about sections. So we want you to make a test that does move some value to a variable, call a section, and then test if that value is present in another variable. So you could do something very simple like that, just to verify that the programmer has understood partly writing a test, but also partly writing a move statement. And then you can just expand on that, making tests that explains arrays, multidimensional arrays, and so on. And you can approach that both by having the student write the test, but you can also use pre-written tests. And there is actually already a website doing that, using COBOL Check. So we are getting a lot of reach, but you could also put it the other way around, flip it on the side. When you're done, when you've learned COBOL, you could get a piece of code and get the task, get this under test, because that's another practice that you would need to learn, to have some code that somebody else have written, and learning how to make a test that will actually exercise that code. And when you've done that, you can start refactoring the code to make even better tests. And I have taught COBOL, and I've taught a lot of courses at our organization, but I'm not expert at building a course curriculum or how to approach this. So I'm just, I would just try things out.
I do like the first option that you actually opened with in terms of ideas and thoughts, Rune. It was not the way I was looking at it, at least coming into it from a unit testing perspective. So that I thought was very interesting. You said take smaller sections. I know not using the term section of COBOL, but smaller pieces of, you know, content that we want to teach, and teach it through testing. That's a nifty approach as well, right? And that would mean a lot of really good content can be added to the course from a testing perspective, but also teaching COBOL through unit testing, as opposed to here's a big piece of code, run unit testing on it, see what you find as bugs and go fix it. That's one way to approach, which was more, you know, what the way I had it in mind, but I really like the way you were thinking about this, and there's like good opportunity there.
Yeah, in Java world, isn't there? There's maybe not just Java, there's is it still a buzzword, TDD, test-driven development, which is where you write your tests and then your tests, you know, you go backwards. You go, well, if I can assert that this works, now I know it's going to work. And you put the cart before the horse, or the other way around. Yeah. Which is
Exactly.
it's good programming discipline. Yeah.
It's
Cool.
something I've had a lot of success with in other courses, doing small exercises that enables the programmer to get early success, because that early success inspires them to move on to the next exercise and get the same success again. Or maybe the compiler will fail. Well, then they get to learn how to look at a compiler output. But that's also a thing you need to learn how to do.
And I agree with that 100%, because what I had seen over the years in helping mentor some people, give them some quick successes so that they feel a bit of confidence to want to do more. And I love what you guys called it TDD, test-driven development. And I was thinking, oh, maybe we need to call it TDL, test-driven learning.
You could do that.
Lots of 3-letter acronyms. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still looking up for your AAA one, Rune. I haven't found that one yet.
Arrange, act, assert.
Arrange, act, assert. Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Arrange your test, act, do the test, and then assert that you get the right result.
That's awesome. Okay, 3 A's. We will weave that into the COBOL into the chapter as well, the test chapter.
And the other thing that's nice, Rune, you must be pleased with this, because you're very much a I'm trying to find the right word. The only word I can think of is preach, but I mean that as a compliment. You know, good programming discipline. It's not just enough to know how to write the language. You have to write something that's modular, resilient, and has the regression around it. And this seems to be getting people very early on to not just write, you know, garbage in, garbage out code, right? To actually understand discipline. So I think this is a nice vector for us to try. Yeah.
Writing code and thinking about the same time you write it, thinking about how you want to test that piece of code actually makes your code more or easier to maintain, because you're building smaller parts of code at a time, and that enables you to, when you have to maintain it, it's a lot easier to see the code. If you have good class names or function names or section names or paragraph names, whatever, when the names are good, you look at the name, and then you know that section does that thing and only that thing. I don't have to look at it, because I know that's not where my bug is. My bug has to do with file IO, and this has to do with I don't know, multiplying 3 numbers together. So writing code with test in focus enables you to be a lot more focused on the actual code, instead of or writing nice code instead of just hammering on the keyboard and writing pages long sections and so on, because you can test page long sections, but it's very difficult.
You know, I would have people when we would go to debates about which language has its strengths and everything. And some people would always say, COBOL's too verbose. And I like what Rune said there. You can use that to your advantage, name things correctly. So you could be a little bit verbose, and that's your documentation with the labels.
And if you're using VS Code for your COBOL programming, it doesn't matter that your language is verbose, because you have code completion. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And the other thing that I really like about this discussion, Sudarshana. I mean, people throw rocks at COBOL all the time, right? You have to log into, any social media channel, and people are saying, COBOL's dated, and so is the mainframe, and the two will sync together, which is not the truth. But one of the arguments for languages like Java and Node and stuff is that they do have so many great frameworks to surround them, like unit testing frameworks and things like that. And this can come along and say, well, it's COBOL, but it's not your parents' COBOL, right? It's COBOL with a modern, rich test development TDD, approach to it through open source tooling. So you can kind of use that to sort of challenge any misperception or any FUD that's out there. Yeah.
I also like what we talked about in terms of, using this for regression tests too. So in addition to learning and making sure you understand what you wrote is correct, putting that in like an automated pipeline so that in the future,
yes.
that not only did what you changed do what you wanted to do now, but it didn't break any of your earlier work, which I think is important as well. Maybe we could go that way with the course as well. We do a lot of hands-on education as far as learning how to program in COBOL, but maybe extending that into best practices in terms of automation and having, continuous integration pipelines and things of that nature.
That's for sure. Yeah. Get some DevOps. Yeah. To turn it into that kind of, that would be, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And we're doing that.
I was going to say, looking at your smile, looking at the smile behind the
If you have a unit test for one of your programs, you cannot move to production if it fails.
Awesome. And what are you using, just out of curiosity? You're using GitHub or Bitbucket, or
we're on we're on Bitbucket. Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were on Bitbucket. Okay, so yeah, okay. And then you're using Jenkins, right?
Jenkins, and we want to push things to Artifactory as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Not quite there yet, but we want to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think
Wow.
the CI/CD aspect was also something we were considering for the COBOL programming course. And, I think that, Mike, to your point, having the ability to add debugging and testing and making it that, end to end, you learn the language, you write some code, you test it, and then you build that into a pipeline type of thing. This really will help us with that, right? As next steps, I'm thinking about the course's roadmap, right? What is the future for COBOL programming course? We've been super successful. If I remember, in the first few months or first few weeks, we had over 100,000 learners all come and jump into the COBOL programming course. This is April 2020. And today we have a really strong learner community, more than 5,000 learners on the Slack channel, actively, engaging with each other. The best part of it is learners have already gone through it and know some of the gotchas or, things like that, come back out and help others as well. So it's been really good. So I think that is the question, right? What is that roadmap going to be? And for this year, it looks like bringing in COBOL Check and adding that unit testing, and then, further going through that, into that automation that you talked about, Mike, would be a fantastic way to teach young developers end to end with the modern tooling and all of that, what and how you can work on COBOL and, still using all the conventional tools. Joe, back to something you also mentioned, right? Oh, COBOL is old, dead, mainframe. We are the team that's going to change that narrative, right? That's what we're doing here.
Yes, yes and no. I mean, yeah, but yes, but if we can make this away from just learn the language to be a good useful engineer,
yes,
that when you get hired or when you go into an organization, you understand best modern practices, modern principles around test-driven development, around automated DevOps, shift left testing is absolutely what we should be doing, because it's what the market needs. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I often think I have a philosophy in life, and it's one I learned and acquired probably from listening to wiser people, which is that don't don't fight people where they want you to fight them. Just focus on good and
Mhm.
focus on delivering value, and your energy, you will get a better payoff ultimately. You will, you know, so don't wrestle with a pig. They both get muddy and the pig likes it or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this is just good. This is just good for the industry. It's good for
Yes.
existing COBOL customers wanting to modernize. The other thing as well, just I know we're talking about COBOL Check, but I'm always a huge Kix fan. At some point, I'd love to get some Kix COBOL. I know we have issues about how to scale up and isolate students, but this is great for us to do this now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, Joe, you're absolutely right about Kix. And you know, it's just a matter of how we handle, because we got to have different, to really do it right. We've got to give everybody a unique set of definitions, you know, for their
Exactly. We have to give isolation.
And it's kind of like, but I can't give everybody their own Kix. So
yeah, we can't have
love to do it.
students with, we can't have 5,000 regions. We can't have 5,000 students sharing regions. Right. I know, but it's a tough one. Maybe it's a course that people host internally or something like that.
There may be a solution for it in the future, but don't want to talk about it here.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about it here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Rune, out of curiosity, you mentioned you mentioned that they've got to go through your COBOL check before you deploy it through more of your pipe. Are you actually, because of COBOL check, you're letting them go right into production, or it's a staging before production? Just out of curiosity, because it's, you know, serious matter, because I'm sure your COBOL program is the logic of the bank.
Of course, it is at least a large part of it. So if you have code in Visual Studio Code and you want to move that to production, you have to go through a staging environment.
Have to go through the
staging environment.
Staging, right?
Staging, yeah. And if you're not working on VS Code, then you have a test environment below the staging environment.
Okay.
But when they're in staging and they believe they're ready and have done their testing, then they can push to production. Actually, you can go from staging to production in less than a minute.
Wow. From staging to production in less than a minute.
Yes.
Wow.
And by far, most of our deployments are through that pipeline right now.
Wow, you would think the people responsible for your service level agreement would be nervous about that.
It's called DevOps.
I was just going to say, that's right back to the automation that, you know, Mike was also talking about. This is exactly what we want to see happen, right? So this is great. This is thank you for sharing that, Rune. That's exactly what we need to make happen, is that continuous integration in and development, not have to, you know, wait weeks or days or months to get new updates in.
One thing I wanted to share a little bit as we talk about these, what I want to call more disparate pipelines. Like, I guess historically on the mainframe, you had the software change management systems that managed everything end to end, source code to builds, manage your artifacts, and then did deployment. And there were clear and concise boundaries and how those roles applied to that software management process. One thing I just wanted to mention, you know, as we transition to this more, I'll call it a Git native experience. So like in the example of Bitbucket, right? Maybe you have your COBOL source programs in Bitbucket. You can work on them in VS Code. You can sync them onto the mainframe on USS and do a build. You have to have them on the mainframe to do the build because you need the official IBM ZOS Enterprise COBOL compiler, right? So then you have this artifact, and we talked about storing it in something like an artifactory, some binary repository management system like they do on the distributed side. It's becoming very clear on the distributed side that you need a means to check the authenticity of that artifact before you later deploy it. It's the same idea as like when you go to the store to get, let's say you need some Advil or something, you purchase that from the store and you can unscrew the cap and you can see that there's that tamper-proof seal, that nobody's messed with it in the store before you deploy it. The software equivalent of that, as well as the ingredients label on the back, it's called a signed software bill of materials. It describes the artifact you're going to deploy, and it itself is signed so you can verify the authenticity. I just mention it because if we're going into this world where things are moving between locations or sitting in a store for a long period of time, sitting in an artifactory, I think it makes that use case more palatable, more necessary, that you need a way to, you know, convey to your auditors that what I'm deploying is what I think I'm deploying, since it's been sitting in this store for a while. You know, it's sort of the, I'd say the easy version of a software bill of materials to start is something like a file hash check or something. You just check the checksum of the artifact before you distribute it. But if we move beyond COBOL applications and we start talking about Java applications, there's Java applications that run on the mainframe. They might include third-party dependencies. And then another aspect of a software bill of materials that helps is like in the case where you have log4j type scenario. If you were loading those software bill of materials into like a monitoring tool, you would have immediate visibility into where like log4j was in your organization. Now, this is like really far out on a roadmap, but I'm thinking like if we go this route of, you know, I think we start with, you know, interactive, how to develop COBOL programs, best practices as far as a pipeline, but maybe best practices as part of the software development lifecycle, even go to that extent and talk about all the different factors, especially if folks are interested in how they're doing things on the distributed side and the best practices, and they're going towards that. You know, folks who may have been developing COBOL programs for a while, but they see their organization going this path, they would benefit from the learnings of, you know, about Jenkins, about you know, unit testing as part of this, but is about these binary repositories, about managing how you're doing deployments and things of that nature. So I just wanted to mention that. Maybe that's even a longer term vision of the course.
Tangential thing on the integrity. And this is a question for Rune. So Rune, your software, if I'm thinking integrity and thinking like a security person, kind of a worrier about my environment, I would assume COBOL Checker cannot change the code. There's no way COBOL Checker can change the code. Is that probably true, or?
Well, that depends on how you write your JCL.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So remember, the output of COBOL Check is another COBOL program.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So if you take that source code and put it into your original program file, then yeah, then it's changed. But it's not. But then that's your problem. COBOL Check doesn't do that. It will just read the file and output a different file.
Would some of the people that worry about security, would they worry that, hey, they could change my code and I wouldn't know what they did?
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a matter of well, looking at your setup first of all. Yeah. Look at how you're doing the deployment. Well, we have all our source code in PDSEs.
Okay.
Yeah, and COBOL Check runs on USS. So the first thing we do is copy our code from PDSEs to USS. Okay. So already there, you have a separation of the original source.
So then if it went through COBOL Check, goes to production, so next time as a developer, when I grab it from production, I'm getting the output of your COBOL Check is what I'm getting. Is that a fair? It goes through COBOL Check.
We don't deploy the resulting code of the COBOL Check. We deploy the unit tests and we deploy the source code for the program.
Okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah.
And just to, because I know it's a question Joe asked me another time, the source code for your program is not the same source code that COBOL Check runs on. There are some testing languages that enables you to test the binary of your source code, the same binary that you're putting into production. COBOL Check can't do that.
Okay. Yeah, because actually, if it could, you're really dealing at the machine code level, not the language level anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other thoughts on this topic, or, questions for Rune around COBOL Check?
So I think that the ability, I'm just looking at Paul now, because I know we have, lots of students sharing the same LPAR, and I think we'll need to make sure that, are they all isolated from each other? Do they collide with each other or not? And that's one of the things that's,
No,
I imagine that they don't. That
they
they
don't.
can.
And we manage the space. The biggest issue is disk storage management, because you don't want people taking it all. And I think, we don't have that under control as much as I thought. But it sounds like, I was looking at Rune's GitHub, and the product itself wouldn't take a lot. Now, what does each individual need in their Unix Unix file system space? I don't know yet without looking at it. Doesn't look like it's heavy in any way. If we replicate it across 1,000 or more, several thousand people.
But they're all isolated. I mean, all they're basically running Java, and they're running the compiles, which shouldn't be. I know with Kix, for example, it's all in batch.
This is all in batch. Because it's batch,
Okay.
they're automatically isolated, because each batch is an address space, and all address spaces are, the system manages that, so they can't get a blue screen of death, if you will, because of what's called key control protection. So yeah, there's isolation. It's part of the operating system.
We could do the test-driven development on for the DevOps one, which is really ambitious and a phenomenal hill to try and climb. Then you've got to think about, well, where's Jenkins being hosted and things like that, don't we? And do we do that, or do we just let people go and source their own Jenkins? That's hard. And how do we throttle that and scale it? Yeah,
that's an area I'm very naive in. I can spell Jenkins.
Well, we could ask OMP for a shared Jenkins instance maybe, and then have users register, hook them up on that, and then we could decide whether or not we wanted to do. I know COBOL Check works with the GNU compiler, but what would be interesting is if we could, we could go from Jenkins and SSH into the mainframe machine, and then do it on platform. So we could have Jenkins SSH onto USS, and then run the COBOL Check there and gather the results. I'm not sure, is that how you're doing it, Rune, or are you in your Jenkins pipelines, are you using GNU COBOL?
We're using GNU COBOL in the pipeline.
They're using GNU COBOL in the pipeline. But Mike brought up an interesting point. We're going slightly more into the DevOps slant, but the second if all of your source code is mounted in GitHub or Bitbucket or something like that, but then you have to use the IBM Z on-prem compiler, because that's requirement to run it in production, then you have to basically have a Git client installed, and I don't believe there is an open source in the industry right now. I don't believe anybody has created an open source version of the Git client ported to run on the USS. It's available under a permissive users license, but I might be wrong with that.
You could also clone it to the Jenkins box, and then use SSH or FTP or what have you, or Zoe, to sync those files to USS. And then you could then invoke COBOL Check over SSH.
You could, good call. Yeah. You could use FTP, you could use an SCP, whatever. There's a file transfer command under SSH, isn't there?
Yeah. I suppose if it was a huge application, you'd run into some issues, because it would take a while for that process to complete. But other than that, I think it would work okay. At least for the scope of the COBOL programming course, we're working on small COBOL applications, not these huge ones.
And we don't have to worry about lots of advanced code page tagging, because it's just a bunch of it static anyway, probably, isn't it? Yeah. It's when you end up with mixed languages where in the same repo, when you have to have them tagged correctly, that it gets sort of awkward. And that's where the Git client does a good job, right?
Yeah, and actually I'm just thinking right now for the COBOL programming course, the source code isn't managed really in Git. For the most part, when folks are taking the course, it's already pre-set up in a PDS. So for like what we're doing, like as a small piece we could bite off, is just copy that, like Rune was saying, he has things in PDSs,
Yeah.
copy those into USS. We could do that for now. And
we'll
then
use the
circle
Zoe-
back on the GitHub native kind of experience.
Yeah, Mike, and if we did that with the Zoe CLI, it's perfect use case for it, right?
Yeah,
We just
yeah.
get Jenkins to just basically smack on some CLI commands, you know, Zoe upload, Zoe download, whatever. Nice, cool.
Yeah, you can actually, I know you mentioned that, we could even just use Zoe CLI to run the SSH command. They wouldn't have to start an SSH connection separately. We
Yeah,
could do
yeah,
that
why
too.
not? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so we just released to our developers the ability to compile using the IBM compiler in VS Code using Zoe commands.
You did?
Okay.
Yeah, we
Okay.
just did
Nice.
that.
So how did you do that, Rune? Did you do that with the Zoe SSH issue?
Well, that's just Zoe files.
Just Zoe files, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Push the files needed to compile this, run our compile script, grab the output, and put it on the VS Code screen.
The JCL is remote, and you're essentially submitting it
Mhm.
from the
Yeah.
distributed, and it goes into the system, get a result.
By the way, Rune, what do you want to call? I forgot to ask. Did you become an Open Mainframe Project ambassador or not?
I did. Yes.
Excellent. Good job. I'm behind with my
Yeah.
emails
you.
and I haven't caught up. Yeah. Because you certainly are one if you're not already. Good.
Thank
So
you.
hopefully there's some swag coming your way or some t-shirts or some opportunities to present this because it's just amazing. Wow.
Congratulations, Rune.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to be, cognizant of time as well. We do have a little bit more time, but thinking about, how would we want to move forward? And Rune, if it's okay with you, we would love to be able to, pick your brains as we start to further, formalize all of this discussion
Of
into
course.
how do we bring that to life in the COBOL programming course. So yes, I heard the resounding, of course. Thank you.
We're using a lot of our effort on COBOL Check, so I don't think we will be able to contribute heavily towards the course. But if you have any issues with running COBOL Check or in that order, we can definitely help you with that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically a good time to call out to our large community of learners and anyone else who is interested, right, in COBOL or has COBOL experience and wondering how they could contribute and be part of this project. Like Mike mentioned early on in the call, just come in and try and be a contributor, open an issue on the COBOL Programming Course project and
All the COBOL Check project.
or on the COBOL Check
Or the
project.
COBOL Check, yeah.
Or
Well, the
on
other thing-
project.
So Sudarshan, to that point, I mean, Zoe has had huge success with Zoe Explorer by being included in the COBOL programming course. It was probably the first real boost that it got that made it turn into, unashamed plug, the new face of the mainframe, because it is, right? But if I look at the last release of Zoe now, there's lots of real finesse and polish about you save a file and it crashes and can it editor remain dirty and some the real last mile of kind of production fixes. What I'm hoping with COBOL Check is that by getting in the courses and when we see more students and Dr. Cameron CA, East Carolina University, I met with some students from Atlanta that were at I think Albany State University. There's lots of other great people learning from this, and these students are bright as a button, are desperate to start their career with something behind them. I'm hoping that they can not only become consumers of this, but actually become your next generation of committers, and also taking this into the corporate hires that they've got. So I don't want to oversell it, but certainly with Zoe, that has occurred over the last 3 years by being in the course, and I'm hoping that will feed back into. So we're not just asking you to give us information, we're hopefully giving you your next generation of committers to help make your project be more successful.
Exactly. And I think it's a great way for someone to get some hands-on real experience as well, right? Being part of the project and committing to the project, working on the next steps in the next generation of the course, and engaging and working across these projects of Zoe, COBOL Check, and it, I think, is from a student, from a next generation, learner perspective as well, that we're asking, saying, please help and come help be a contributor and be part of this project. It's a great way to showcase experience outside of having learned the content and learned the course, right?
One thing that I got out of this when Joe brought up test-driven development, I actually just did a search for test-driven learner, and I didn't realize it's an ACM thing, and it's approach to teaching computer programming that involves introducing and exploring new concepts through automated unit tests. So there is something called test-driven learning, and it's from the ACM, the Association of Computing Machinery.
Yep.
Cool.
So good call on that acronym, Paul. You
Yeah.
called it.
I thought I was going to try to patent it, but it's already taken. If anybody can patent the alphabet or trademark the whole alphabet.
Yeah.
Another TLA. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Anything else? Or I'd like to close and say, thank you so much, Rune, for always being, like, okay, yeah, I'll come and speak, and, sharing the journey that you've been going through, and, your expertise. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Rune.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Rune, will you be in Oslo in May, or for the
That hasn't been decided yet.
GSE Nordics? Oh, okay. Well, I'll be there.
So I definitely don't have a session to present there. So
Oh,
if I am there, then it's as a participant.
I have two
No.
sessions. Reach
Okay.
out to me afterwards. I'll be very happy if it would help you get travel. Anyway, I'm very happy to co-present with you always, especially if it helps to get you there. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, then. Thanks, everyone, once again. And thank you so much, Rune. Look forward to our continued working together and making and bringing COBOL Check and into our COBOL programming course. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.